And good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of the 31 Days of Monsters. I am your host, Graham Nolan, and this morning we're talking about King Kong, 1933's classic film, the granddaddy of them all, the eighth wonder of the world, if you will. I just want to point out that is the most unrealistic piece of dialogue in the entire movie. In a movie with monsters and dinosaurs and a giant gorilla running amok in New York, the most unrealistic thing in this film is that a movie producer would offer to share his profits with anybody. Too much will be up in lights on Broadway. Kong, the eighth wonder of the world.
Wild, weird, wonderful, the stuff for which movies were made. Adventure, to make you wonder if it's true, while your eyes convince you that it is. Truly, the thrill of thrills. Don't miss it this time.
Okay. Where am I getting my... So, this film was released in 1933, directed by Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Schoedsack. And in fact, that sequence in the trailer that you saw of the two guys, the two pilots in the plane, that's actually them. They helped shoot down Kong at the end. Oops, spoiler alert if you haven't seen King Kong. But at this point, who doesn't know that story? This film it has so much imagery that's incredible. Just want to point out a few things here. Of course, this is a promotional piece, but I remember seeing this in one of the Monster Times magazines, and it was so expressionistic and haunting that I loved it. Now, what boy wouldn't want to see this movie, you know? There we go. Blow that up a little. You've got a pterodactyl, a girl in terror, and Kong fighting on this giant cliff. The thing that I love about this movie the most, and if you've ever watched my Storyteller show, one of my 3 tenets is immersion. When I'm specifically talking about comics, but it also applies to film, that the idea is to immerse the viewer into whatever fantastical series of events you're creating, that they believe it, you know. Willis O'Brien, the special effects master who created Kong and all these stop motion effects, look at the backgrounds here. Look at the depth. These are like paintings. It's just, it's so lush with detail. You look at a still like this and you can't help but just stare at it. It looks like an illustration, you know, with all the little bits of detail and vines and look at the stuff in the background here. I mean, this is 1933 too. This is just incredible. By the time Kong gets to New York City. It's almost like two separate movies. Um, and I love them both. I love the jungle sequences, and I love when he gets to New York and he starts terrorizing New York. It's so amazing, the integration of live action and stop motion photography is incredible. Now you can't talk about Kong without the three leads in here: Fay Wray, Bruce Cabot, and Robert Armstrong. They are perfect in their roles, and Fay Wray is just an absolute beauty. Uh, when you catch a still like this, uh, you know, it doesn't matter whether her hairstyle, her eyebrows are from the 1930s. Uh, she's just a gorgeous woman. And I think she gets overlooked when people are talking about, the great looking actresses of the day. But to me, Fay Wray was just like that girl next door beauty, you know? Now, when this movie came out, there was no production code. The Breen office and the Hayes Commission didn't come into effect till 1934, and much like comic book um, censorship, they started a bunch of do-gooders got together and said, "Oh, Hollywood's getting off the rails, and we need to rein them in and uh, you know put some rules in line for them." Uh, I love these pre-code films because they touch on subjects that, and even by our standards, uh, somewhat obliquely, but powerfully. Uh, there was no aversion to any kind of nudity or anything like that either. Um, but I think that the restrictions, uh, like any kind of censorship, are not good. Uh, but it does force artists to be more creative in getting their message across. So that's a challenge too. But back then, oops, nip slip, pre-code film. There's a bunch of scenes from this film that they took out uh, when they re-released it slightly later. Um, there's a lot of violence um, that was removed. There's a scene where Kong is chewing on natives, where he stomps one guy to death. When he gets to New York, I think he chews a guy, throws him down. He climbs up the Empire State Building and he reaches into a room and grabs a woman that he thinks is Ann Darrow, and he realizes she's not, and he just drops her to the ground. Um, so there's well, and then there's the famous scene of when Kong has Anne to himself and he starts peeling her clothes off like a banana. All those scenes were removed and weren't restored to the film until 1971, and then the print got cleaned up, and it the only thing that wasn't restored is there was a sequence where Kong had taken a bunch of the sailors from the ship were on this log bridge, and Kong shakes the log bridge, knocking him down into this valley. And the movie cuts away there, but there's a sequence where there are like spiders and bug creatures down there that then descended on those men and devoured them. And that was filmed and was shown to test audiences, and it was immediately taken out because they felt it was too gross, too violent, whatever. This is the actual armature. This is all that's left of King Kong today. This is in the possession, or was at least, of film historian and actor Bob Burns. I met Bob at a Monster Bash in, I think, the early 2000s, and he brought this there, and I got to hold it and move it and everything. And it's unbelievable how tight the joints are, um, um, how they move so fluidly, and they stay their position. And this little armature here that was created by I think it was Marcel Delgado was his name, something Delgado, who was the O'Brien's assistant, helped build this. that after what, 80, 90 years, almost 90 years, that this thing still holds up and still bends the way it was supposed to and was designed to. Now, it was covered in rubber and rabbit fur to give Kong, but look at that ape, the ape-like look. But look at that skull. I mean, that's like a real gorilla skull there, done in metal. It's so great that this little metal puppet, gave birth to this creature with so much pathos. So I spoke about that sequence that they took out with the spiders, and in 2005, when Peter Jackson made his bloated version of King Kong, he wanted to kind of restore this. So he had the guys use the same type of technique as stop motion and rear screen projection stuff, and recreate the sequence based upon the storyboards and the script that was originally removed. So if you haven't seen that, this is really cool. So here's the sequence from the original movie, obviously. And that's about as far as you got, with these guys falling. Some of them to their deaths, some not. Oh, that guy fell to his death. Kong's roar is a combination of lion and tiger roars run backwards. I have to talk a little bit about the Max Steiner score. If there's one thing that I have to criticize about this film, ooh, it's so great. Oh, here we go. All right, I'll talk about the Max Steiner score later, because here's all the new stuff that's been filmed by Peter Jackson. Now imagine being in a 1933 audience and seeing this sequence. I think you can see where they would take it out. Now we're back to the original footage. Such pathos in a puppet. So amazing. And this is original footage too. This creature coming up. Isn't that awesome? Pretty creepy stuff. You can see why they would take that out. Now back to the soundtrack. Now this film is credited. Oops.
The original is my all-time favorite movie.
Oh, goody for you. Okay, so the Max Steiner soundtrack is credited as being the first orchestral soundtrack added to a film. And Steiner was a trailblazer in creating themes for various scenes and reoccurring themes, so that you knew, like, there's the Kong theme, the Andero theme, which, guys like John Williams and many modern guys still use today. The problem I have with this one, and I don't think the issue is the music itself, it's the recording aspect of it. It seems like the musical track lays over the sound effects and the dialogue so heavy that to me, it's bombastic. I find myself turning the volume down sometimes when there's, some of these sequences. And it has always bothered me ever since I was a kid watching this movie. I'm like, oh, damn, that music is so loud. I'd rather hear Kong roar or something, As I said yesterday, that could be part of the reason why I prefer Godzilla, because the music in Godzilla is amazing. It also could be that, like most boys growing up, I love dinosaurs, and Godzilla was a dinosaur / dragon, and Kong was a gorilla, and gorillas were real. Dinosaurs and dragons. Well, dinosaurs were real, but dragons were not. And so maybe it was that fantasy element that I preferred, but that's neither here nor there. I love this film, and my only criticism is really is the soundtrack. There's a couple dialogue things in this movie that I wonder about. It's like, it's really sort of a sign of the times. This is very early on in the talking films, so acting styles and stuff were different. There's a lot of sort of over the top emoting at times, which you get in these early 30s films. But there's some moments where I feel like the actors almost forgot their lines. Like when Carl Denham introduces himself, he says, "Do you know who I am? I'm Carl Denham." It's like he couldn't remember who he was, there's a few of those little moments where you feel like the actors might be stumbling for their lines. But again, just an incredibly historic film. If you haven't seen it, I can't imagine anybody in this room here hasn't seen it. Nothing has come close to this. They've remade it. Well, there's various Kong sequels, but then they've remade King Kong in 1976 with Jeff Bridges, and then of course in 2005 with the Peter Jackson version. None of them come close. The Peter Jackson one had the advantage of having Weta Works do the special effects and state of the art, and all that kind of stuff. But that version is like a guy who loves it too much, and he puts everything plus the kitchen sink into it, and it's bloated. It takes forever. I think that's a 3.5 hour film. What's his name? Alfred Hitchcock said the length of a film should be determined by the size of a bladder. How long you can hold it before you gotta pee in the movie theater. But this is the king and the daddy of them all. So good morning, everybody. Pop Culture Avenger, SDA is here, Prater7, Dunn Ringle, good morning, good morning. Rob Fellows has a little quote here. There's something on the other side, something they fear. Did you ever hear of Kong? Yeah, great delivery by Robert Armstrong there. JP Roca is here. Stripling Vaughn. Not on topic, but congrats to Aaron on his campaign. 6 figures young lady on his first Indiegogo campaign, and no one was streaming, pushing it when it reached 100K. Well, they were going to close it out tonight, but they'll still do so. So he's going to go over that number. So that's fantastic. Steve Lowenthal couldn't see the discussion on YouTube, so came here for today. That's weird. Harryhausen. Nope, this is the movie that inspired Ray Harryhausen. Willis O'Brien was the special effects master on this, and eventually Ray Harryhausen uh, worked with Willis O'Brien on Mighty Joe Young. But like many creatives, this movie was an inspiration to not only Ray Harryhausen but Ray Bradbury, uh, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. A list goes on and on. It's really incalculable the amount of creative people that were inspired by this film. Pop Culture Avenger says the effects are better and more believable than a lot of the CGI today. Yeah, I don't know about, they're charming for sure. Uh, does it look realistic? No, but it's artistic. And I think that goes a long way too. What's missing is the heart. Like if you had those Peter Jackson uh, special effects, and it was edited better, and really tapped into that emotional tie and that immersion that I speak about. You could create the next version of Kong, but uh, it's magic. That's so funny. My brother just chimed in. How odd! I watched this last night. Magical. Bingo. Yeah, rear projection screens is what they used, and it really is seamless how Jackson had done this. I almost wished he had done the whole movie like that. You know, Hans Roger. It's like a Frazetta. Speaking of the background image that I showed before, I agree. It does look like a Frazetta painting. Another guy who was inspired by King Kong. You caught us, Graham Nolan. We are all here for the Fay Ray cheesecake. And what's wrong with that? The Kong fight scenes are really well choreographed. Yeah, I read recently that the sequence where Kong fights the T-Rex was actually acted out by Marion Cooper and Ernest Shosdak, who at one time were wrestlers. Now I don't know if they were professional wrestlers or if they were collegiate or high school wrestlers, but they kind of acted that out. Good morning, Sir Adro. Hail, Graham. Good to see you. Haven't slept, working, but always like these insights. Well, I'm glad you could be here. Sorry you couldn't sleep. JP Roca says Kong had a few dong slips too. I must have missed those scenes. That is the Harryhausen stop motion figure for Kong. No, it's not. Harryhausen was a boy at this point. So he did not work on this film. He worked on Mighty Joe Young with Willis O'Brien. And the armature was created by Delgado. Todd Haberscheid is here. Good morning, Todd. Rob Fellows says Mystery of the Wax Museum and The Most Dangerous Game are great Fay Ray flicks as well. Yeah, the interesting thing about The Most Dangerous Game was that it was filmed on the same set, the same jungle set. So if you watch that movie, and it also has Robert Armstrong in it and Fay Ray. and Joel McRae, who's not in this film, but it's an excellent film. And when you see them running through the jungles, you're just waiting for a Tyrannosaurus to pop up because it's I think they filmed it at different times of the day or very close to the time they were filming Kong. It's pretty cool. And the Mystery of the Wax Museum that just got a Blu-ray cleanup. That and Professor X, which are two Fay Ray films, and they're also early because Dr. X is pre-King Kong, and they're early what they call two-strip Technicolor processes. So it adds a semblance of color to it, and it now that they've been cleaned up and stuff, they look amazing. Dr. X is a tough chew. It's a little hard. But Mystery of the Wax Museum, if you've ever seen the 1950s House of Wax, which was a remake of it, it's a good film. Yeah, we talked about that, the deleted scenes of him eating natives and also people in New York. He doesn't swallow them like the beast from 20,000 Fathoms does, but he's chewing on them. He puts them in his mouth and just bites down. Uh, I remember being disappointed kid when I heard that there were spiders eating people in the valley and they deleted them from the film. Yeah, I think that would be a holy grail. If we could find that footage that was cut, maybe in some Eastern Bloc or European film archive or something. That's where they find a lot of these things. It would be so incredible if they could find that. To me, that's that and the soundtrack to Frankenstein, the original soundtrack to Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, where Bela Lugosi is speaking, would be holy grails for me. I would love to see those integrated back into the films. Maybe someday. My brother again. I remember so clearly how excited you and I were to catch the 1976 reboot in Melbourne with the World Trade Centers supplanting the Empire State Building in the new reimagining. Meh. Yeah, the thing about that movie is the poster was so awesome. But the movie was so, the Kong was so bad. And it was kind of like the 70s hippie version. Charles Grodin. Charles Grodin's great. I love Charles Grodin. But again, modernizing it is a mistake. Graham, which is the better Kong, the original movie versus Peter Jackson version? The original. There's no two ways about it. As I said, the Peter Jackson one's bloated. It's like his third Lord of the Rings film. He didn't know how to end it, and he was a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Some of these directors so fall in love with the material that when they finally get the opportunity to do their dream thing, is like they can't cut anything from it. And when your ass is in a seat for 3.5 hours or 4 for his Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King film, the director's cut, nothing's that good. You got to be able to cut stuff out and move the story along. Love to see you critique great films like L.A. Confidential. I love L.A. Confidential. That is a great film. Hey, Guy Dorian is here. Good morning, Guy. George Travelos, good morning. What? Wait a minute. What? Rogue Usagi, you've never seen King Kong? I should remedy that soon. Yes, you should. I can't believe there's anybody hasn't seen King Kong yet. Prater 7 hadn't seen this recreated scene. He says, very cool. Well, I'm glad you got to see it here. It's on the DVD or Blu-ray of the 2005 King Kong. So, well, it's also all over YouTube. So, I mean, if you didn't want to buy that bloated movie. Johnny Rando is here. Good morning, Johnny. Bit of cheesy dialogue and acting can all be excused, in my opinion. It is part of the nostalgia for me. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Like everything, it's a product of its times. And this is the 1930s. There's some really great um, bits of dialogue in there. Some of it cheesy, some of it revealing, which of its day. Right in the beginning, when the producer, the Broadway producer who goes to Carl Denham before they set sail and tells him that he can't get any girls, to go on this trip because of insurance costs. The insurance, there's hand grenades on this thing, and Denham has a reputation for going into dangerous areas, and so I thought that was a pretty realistic look at things, a very prosaic, if you will, uh, look at reality, even in 1933, insurance. I thought that was pretty cool. One of my favorite lines in here is when Carl Denham realizes that Jack Driscoll is in love with Ann Darrow, and he says, "Oh, sure, I know. What is it? A big something like a big lug like you falls in love with a good-looking dame, and bam, you go all sappy on me." it's it's not quite the exact quote, but that is definitely the flavor of it. But that line cracks me. It's very indicative of that snappy 30s dialogue, in movies. Stripling Vaughn, talking about my critique of the soundtrack, says, I feel the opposite is today. The sound effects laid over everything so you can't hear the actors. Studios want so much realism, they have forgotten the fantasy aspect of storytelling. Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's very little fantasy, it seems like. Yeah, Rob, I agree with this 100%. The score does get into a frenzy as Kong is summoned, but the quiet moments before he appears, where you just hear the roars, is genius. Yeah, it's really great. Da, 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 da. Public service announcement from Pop Culture Avenger for Monster fans. This Thursday at select movie theaters, the original Evil Dead is playing with Bruce Campbell. Yeah, that's a Fathom event. Yesterday, Fathom had a double feature of the original Dracula and the original Frankenstein playing together. And on October 30th, they're repeating that double feature with The Invisible Man and The Wolfman. So you should go on the Fathom Events site and take a look and see if it's in your area, if you want to catch these movies on the big screen the way they were meant to be seen. JP Roca, I agree with the critique on the soundtrack, but let's give it some slack for being a few years removed from the silent era, still figuring out how to blend different soundtracks. No doubt about it. I do give it that space because it is so groundbreaking. It is so new. Um, it's just a little hard on my senses. King Kong inspired Harryhausen, so we have Kong to thank for that, for the brilliant Clash of the Titans. I think we can all agree that Clash of the Titans is awesome, right, Mr. Nolan? Right? No. Oh, Prater 7 says, to the guy who switched from YouTube because the chat wasn't showing up, try switching between live chat and top chat a couple times. It started doing the same thing to me the last few weeks. Oh, good heads up there. Thank you, Prater 7. Dr. Masks Retro Elixir is here. He's a bit late, but he still made it. All right, excellent. Peter Jackson's King Kong is better than a sleeping pill. Yeah, I have to agree with that. You know, the other thing about Peter Jackson's version is I don't care for anybody in that film, whereas I like Denham and Driscoll and Anne in this movie. I felt like everybody in the Peter Jackson movie, it's like watching a John Carpenter film. You know, I don't care about anybody. Hyper Kaiju saw this in the theaters. Yeah, I saw when they cleaned it up and restored everything. I saw it in the theaters too. Uh, it's pretty amazing. I love to see old movies in the theaters the way that they were originally presented, and put myself in the time frame of when that movie came out. I was at a movie festival one time. I got to see It Came from Outer Space in 3D, you know, with 3D glasses, and I saw the Creature from the Black Lagoon that way too on the big screen. And if you ever have the opportunity to see these old movies on the big screen, take it because it's so great. It's a whole nother way of reliving these films, because we're used to seeing them on televisions. And in my case, you know, little black and white televisions back in the day, but now we have these large, you know, HD televisions, which is still great, but it's not the same as seeing it on a large screen. Dr. Mask's Retro Elixir. I love House of Wax and enjoyed Mystery at the Wax Museum too. I saw House of Wax, the 1950s version with Vincent Price, in the movie theater in 3D, not in 1953 or when it came out, in the 1970s with my brother in Long Beach, Long Island. And we loved it. I mean, Vincent Price with the cloak and the way he walked and everything was so creepy and cool. That was a great experience to see that. It was in, you know, Technicolor in the 3D. Then there's the guy with the ball paddle going pop pop pop, and the ball coming right at you in 3D. Really neat. Mr. Von Stogel, listen to Bandmade. George Travelos, I only managed Peter Jackson's Kong an hour at a time and caught the end on TV 6 years later on a rainy weekend. Wow. Some love here for Charles Grodin, who recently passed away. Now, Kong on Skull Island was pretty good, I have to say. As far as any kind of like Kong sequel type things, that one I liked. It had that adventure feel to it, some humor, some interesting characters. Dunn Ringle says it's been a long time since I've seen Kong, but I plan to watch it very soon. Cool. Yeah, 'tis the season, Find a nice rainy day and throw Kong on. Thank you, Frankie. I've never seen it. Downloaded it yesterday. Um, the original Kong? Is that what you're talking about? That you've never seen that? Brody Limbruggen is here. Good morning. Dave Alameda. Good morning. Good morning, sir. Dave, please go over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so, and hit the bell for notifications, because I won't be broadcasting all of these on Facebook, and I don't want anybody to miss these episodes. So I'm trying to get everybody to port over to the Facebook page or the YouTube page. The subscription is free. All you got to do is hit subscribe, hit like, and then hit the notifications bell, and you'll never miss out on any of these shows. But yeah, I'm going to be not broadcasting on Facebook. So that goes for anybody that's currently viewing on Facebook. Please go do that so you don't miss out. I'll announce it on Facebook, but you still have to go to the link on YouTube. Will Comicsgate comics be sold in stores ever? Well, there's a disconnect. I don't know. There's a lot of issues why they won't be, but it's going to depend on each individual. Oh. Well, project's done poorly. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Will your last monster you cover be Cecil? No. That's too scary for the 31 Days of Monsters. I'm trying to keep it light. Oh, poor Cecil getting some slack here, or getting slagged on here. Is Son of Kong any good? It is. It picks up right where, pretty much where Kong left off. And what I really, it's definitely a lighter film. The Kong monkey is, much more likable. And it's sort of a movie about redemption, because we open up with Carl Denham, who is destitute practically because of, and again, this is one of those really cool insertions of reality into this early, 1930s. Again, I think it was 1931 movie, because he's destitute because of all the lawsuits. People have sued his ass off for all the damage that Kong did when he ran amok. There's death, there's property destruction, all of that stuff, and so he's basically, gotten out of Dodge, and he's trying to rebuild, and he wants to go back to Skull Island, so that he can, I guess, redeem himself. It's been a while since I've seen it. I can't remember exactly his motivation for going back, and maybe wanting to bring another monster back. I don't know, but yeah, it's a good movie. If you grew up in the tri-state area back in the 60s and 70s, and maybe even to the 80s, Thanksgiving on is either WOR, WPIX, used to show King Kong, Son of Kong, and Mighty Joe Young back to back on Thanksgiving. So, a lot of people think of Thanksgiving as, football, but for me, it was monkeys. And yes, Son of Kong is greater than Son of Godzilla. Sir Adro, as a noob, I was too poor as a kid to continually buy comics every month, but got to love your Batman run very much. Thankfully, now I am less poor. Well, thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Son of Kong pulled some MMA moves against that cave bear. Oh, Guy says it was PIX. Okay, thanks, Guy. I knew it was one of those two. Okay, I think I've covered everybody. Excellent. Hope you enjoyed today's broadcast of day 3 of 31 Days of Monsters. Tomorrow, we'll be back at, let's see, tomorrow's Monday. Yep, 8 o'clock. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be discussing the first monster movie I ever saw, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman from 1943. So tune in for that, and we shall see you then. Have a great rest of your weekend. Oh, wait, somebody says, oh, the boss just chimed in before we sign off. Project's done poorly. Sent another $5 super chat. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. I like all the Kong movies, even the Peter Jackson one. Oh, that's good. If you love the monster, you forgive a lot, I mean, there's a lot of Godzilla movies where I'm like, but I still watch them. I still watch them. So thank you for that, sir. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you tomorrow morning, and be there for one of the greatest openings of Universal Monster history for Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. See you then. Bye-bye.